Bob Marley says I and I. He's talking about you are me. It's indivisible, and I'm indivisible from God. And I think the closer you are to knowing that, the easier it is to manifest as that. Everything is cyclical, and just spring just happened again. It happens every year. It's a cycle. And if you follow just the wheel of life, we're going to move into summer, which is the maturation of everything that's just beginning to blossom right now. And then fall is the decline, and death, and winter is that fallow time where we have death and then the conception and then the gestation before spring again. So that's the life cycle. And we're doing that all the time. So if we are graduating, that's a death. You're ending your life as a student and beginning your life as a career person.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Shifting Dimensions podcast. This is a podcast where we explore the unseen, the unknown, and the transformative moments that shift our understanding of reality. I'm your host, Jumi Moses, spiritual seeker and metaphysical investigator, exploring the mysteries of life. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Laura Giles. Laura is an animist, a natural burial advocate, home funeral facilitator, and funeral officiant, and she also works with clients to unblock stuck energy. Laura, welcome to Shifting Dimensions. It's such a pleasure to have you here on the show.
It's fantastic to be here.
I really am curious about animism and what that practice is. So, could you please explain what animism is and how you got into it?
It's a hard thing to kind of explain. So, for a long time, I explained animism as the belief that everything is alive, sacred, and connected. And that seems, it doesn't feel, it is true, but it doesn't feel really comprehensive. It doesn't really capture it. And I think it's because it's such a hard thing to put in a box because it takes the box away. So, animism really is the act of living. And if you're living from a perspective of everything that is sacred, then you're doing that in a connected way, in a way that honors all things, in a way that honors yourself, in a way that is mindful. So it's all of those things, and every single thing you do, it's in everything. And some people think of that as a religion or a spiritual path, but I think even to put that label on it is too limiting. I don't think it is a spiritual path. I think it's a way of life. And I got into it because my mom was born into it. So I was born into it through her. And it because it's a way of living that it's not like there's a Bible and you read it and you do these things and you have 10 commandments. It's a way of learning how to live through your own experiences. So everybody does it differently. Everybody thinks of it differently. And I really love that part about it too, because it is very personal. And it's also geographical. So it's going to look different in the Antarctic than it does in the desert.
So, when I looked it up, and to your point, it says that animism is a belief system where natural elements, objects, and creatures are believed to possess a distinct spiritual essence or soul and are viewed as animated and having agency. But what you're saying that sometimes, like, while that is true, that definition, I guess, doesn't fully capture the full picture or essence of animism. And you are trying to, at least what I'm hearing you say, is the fact that we are unlimited and we are connected to
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
And by just existing and living and being aware of our existence and living is the practice of animism because we're already
That's right.
connected to everything. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So you have to know that. And I think when it flows through your veins in that way, then you just automatically show up differently.
Now, is animism specific or tied to a certain group of people or certain geography or location or culture or tradition? Because I did hear you say that it's going to look different depending on where you're located or the
Well,
geography you're from. Yeah.
so history says that animism is the oldest religion and it has existed everywhere. So it's the pre-religion. It's the root of everywhere, everybody, everywhere. So before there was religion, there was animism.
I had someone on the show talk about African spirituality, and she said that a lot of African spirituality is rooted in animism.
Yes.
And I know that in a lot of indigenous groups as well,
Yes.
they are rooted in animism. That's like their foundation of
Right.
belief or spirituality or communing with themselves and the divine. I think it's good that you highlighted that you don't think of it as a religion because there isn't a Bible that you have to follow. But are there any sort of sacred practices or rites or rituals that you conduct as a way of practicing animism besides just like living and existing and being aware of the fact that we're all connected to everything?
Yes. And those are going to be different depending on what culture you come from and the traditions of your people. But the thing that gets me is when people start talking about animism, that's kind of what they hone in on. And then let's say that I love it. It sounds really great. I want to do it. So, as a new person to animism, that's the things that I'm going to study. And I think you can be an animist without any of that. So, rituals are a way to bring tradition to people, a way for people to celebrate and worship, if you want to use that word, together. But you don't have to have any of it. I think they're very powerful. And you would do these things at the same time as you would any important event. So weddings, funerals, births, because most of these animistic cultures were agricultural, they're going to revolve around agriculture as well. So there may be things for the moon, for the planting, for the harvest. That's going to be super common.
So, growing up as an animist, right, or just having this understanding that everything is essentially alive and you're connected to everything, how did that shape your perspective of the world? Because a lot of people don't necessarily grow up with those belief systems. And I remember, like, when I would look at animals, I felt so separate from animals or plants, right? For example, I didn't realize I was a part of nature until now in as I'm growing up and immersing myself in the world more and being more aware of the fact that I'm this entity that's part of these other entities that inhabit the earth. So I didn't have that knowledge growing up, but you did. So how did that shape your view of the world?
It's one of these things that's hard to talk about because when something is a part of you, it's hard to imagine what it's like to not have that or to speak from somebody else's perspective. So it's hard to say, but I think it made me just more self-aware, more other aware. I definitely didn't have the problems that some people do with taking things personally because none of it's personal. Things have cycles, things happen. It's not personal. If I'm you and you're me, it can't be personal. That would be making me separate from you. So it's just a totally different way of thinking. I mean, it's hard to not get caught up in some of the things that go on, but it's easier to bounce back.
Have you ever been able to communicate with nature spirits? I had someone on the show talk about nature spirits, talk about communing or communicating with animals or plants or trees or anything like that. I wonder if you've ever had any sort of mystical experiences in nature or with animals that you would like to share.
So it's interesting that you say that because, yes, all the time, but they are not, in my experience, they're not like people. I think a lot of people personify them, or what's the word? When you make it into a person, there's a word for that. And my experience is that each thing is its own thing. So they don't talk the way that you and I are talking. They don't care about the same things that you and I care about because they're what they are. But just a couple of days ago, actually, I walk in this certain place pretty regularly, and I love beech trees. And there's two beech trees, and I will always stop and just be with them. And they went into hibernation. So I was going there in the fall, and they just stopped talking to me. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? Are you mad at me? I'm thinking like a human. And no, they were just going into hibernation. So the other day I was walking by there again, and they're alive again. And you can feel it. I was like, oh, you're awake for spring. It happened probably just at the day of spring, in fact. And you can feel them and you can talk to them. And it just feels more like energy rather than they're talking because they don't care about the stuff we care about. But there's definitely a connection. It's, I'm aware of you. I see you. And I was far away, but I could feel their energy before I even rounded the corner. And there's these little devices, like a plant choir is one of them, and you can hook them up and then you can turn their plant vibrations into sound and it sounds like music. And through doing this, people have found that plants know that you're coming or approaching from way far away. So it wasn't my imagination when that I'm coming around the corner and it's just like the forest is alive and there are the trees that are doing that. And so I feel they recognize me. They're like, oh, my friend's back. So it's a real different type of communication. It's not watch out for the boogeyman. They're not, in my experience, they don't really do things like that. And animals are the same. They just care about what they care about. And there is love and things like that, but they just don't have the same concerns. So the communication is totally different. And two, with my experience with communication with spirit, is that the language of spirit is symbols and metaphors. So there's never going to be, like they said, don't go that way. Not to say that other people don't get that. I've never gotten that. I've never gotten that in dreams or any kind of communication is always symbolic. So if you don't speak the language of symbol, metaphor, story, music, these things that are not words, music's words, but like very direct communication, you're going to miss the message.
That's such a good point that you bring up, getting communication through metaphor and symbols and images. I realized recently that whenever I get intuitive hits or I'm thinking about something, I will be presented with a scenario that I went through before as a metaphor to show that, hey, this worked out in a certain way. Understand that this is going to be a similar thing for you moving forward or in the future. There was a lesson here. So again, it wasn't through words, it was literally through symbolism and metaphor. So I really appreciate you for bringing that up. But I want to go back into talking about what you briefly just mentioned, which is talking to spirit. So, all because you're an animist, I don't want to take for granted or assume that you're also psychic, even though I just asked a somewhat psychic question about if you were able to commune with or speak to or communicate with nature and all that stuff. But do you have psychic abilities, and what do you mean by talking to spirit?
I think we all have psychic abilities. We're not limited by our vocal cords or, what we can hear auditorily. We're always in communication with everything if we pay attention because it's us. Am I listening to myself? Am I listening to my body? So I think the more embodied you are, the more powerful you can be in being in touch with other things because the senses come through your body, at least for me. So speaking to spirit, I have a practice where I get in touch with my ancestors every day. I think that helps too because it's I'm here, you're here. If we have to messages for each other, then this is the time to do it. You don't have to guess. They're already there. They know because it's a ritual, it's a pattern. So that makes it easy. But also they're always here anyway. So if you're just talking to them and you're present, then you can hear. Again, for me, it's not going to be words, but I always get something. It might be a license plate, and you're like, oh, it could be a commercial that comes on or a song or something. And that's how it is for me. It's not like words. Or it'll be if I'm asking for something, it might show up in the mail or something like that. They do listen. I don't think that they are like Santa Claus and they're not going to make my wishes come true. That's never been the case. But I'm not the kind of person that asks for that kind of help either, because I feel like I am powerful and I can do what I need to do. So I'm not leaning on them for that kind of stuff either.
I've talked to several people now who keep emphasizing this practice of speaking to ancestors. Why is that so important? Why is you can only speak from your traditions and how you've grown up and what you do in your spiritual life, but why is that practice very important to you and what purpose does it serve? I know that obviously you just alluded to the fact that they do give you intuitive guidance, but why is it important outside of that to really get in touch with our ancestors?
So my acupuncturist does a type of acupuncture where he calls on his ancestors to help him in serving people medicinally. And the way that he explained it to me, he does muscle testing, so kinesiology, is that if you ask your ancestors for help, you test strong, your muscle tests strong. But if you ask somebody else's ancestors for help, you're going to be weak. So they don't everything's connected, but your ancestors have a direct DNA line to you. They're invested in you. So they have something to gain by helping you. And in my work as a trauma therapist and shadow worker, and also my work as a past life regression worker, I've seen that stuff is generational, it's familial. So let's say that I came from a line of sexual assault victims. So my grandmother was assaulted, my mom was assaulted. It could be my dad too, it doesn't have to be females. And then I'm assaulted. The chance of that happening is very high. And I'm not saying that as just this is what I think, this is what I see. So it could be addiction, whatever. Because if I don't clean up my junk, it's going to go to my kids and their kids. So everybody in this line is invested in somebody cleaning it up, and they're going to be there to help. If you don't do that, then the burden gets heavier with each generation. And it doesn't really matter where you clean it up because it's all connected. As long as you clean it up, it'll clear the whole line.
It's very interesting. So it sounds like communing or communicating with our ancestors helps us in our lifetime break generational curses.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's very fascinating to think about. And I have heard someone explain it the same way. And to your point about there being a vested interest because they're part of your bloodline also kind
Yes.
of speaks to the fact that, like you said, it's one thing to ask someone else's ancestors for help or ask or be part of a tradition or religious or spiritual experience that doesn't necessarily align with the group that you're coming from because the messages won't be as strong and they may
Yes.
not be as aligned, which is
Yes.
interesting to think about because when I think about the spirit world, I just feel like I think about it in a general sense. Does it matter who's giving you information? Doesn't everybody want your best interest at heart? At least the ones working in the light. And this is probably a naive way of thinking about it. But having these kind of conversations shows the complexity and realness of the other side, if that makes any sense, and how we are tied to certain spirits more than others. So it's
Yes.
very fascinating. Okay, I just want to hear your thoughts on God, right? From an animist perspective, I know that there's this idea that we're all one and united. Do you believe the same energy flows through all of us? What are your thoughts on God in general or higher intelligence? Do you pray to a higher intelligence? Do you communicate with a higher intelligence?
So this answer is going to be different depending upon who you ask because we're all different. There's not like one central animist belief on this, but personally, I do believe in a creator, and I believe the creator is you or me because we're the same. So I could talk about you or me, same thing. Like when Bob Marley says I and I, he's talking about you are me. It's indivisible, and I'm indivisible from God. And I think the closer you are to knowing that, the easier it is to manifest as that because the separation comes from us. When we don't see ourselves as powerful or as sacred or as divine, then we don't show up in that way. It's if I think that I'm stupid because I was told that my whole life, or I think I'm ugly, or whatever this thing is that I believe, we're going to manifest that way. And all you have to do to know what you believe is look around you because whatever is in your environment, that's you manifesting that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think the more that you are in touch with your divinity, the less that things start to matter because it's all you and it's all divine and it's all okay.
Okay, then it makes me want to go back to something we just talked about, right? Then does it matter who we consider our ancestors if we're all each other?
That's a great question. That's a great question. So I think everything depends on perspective. So in animism, everything is relational. Relational being where do you stand in relation to this thing? And when you are, okay, so if I'm looking at this as a human, then it matters who my ancestors are because that's the lens that I'm seeing it. But if I am big picture and I'm looking at myself as a spirit, it doesn't matter at all. It's all one. And I don't know if I told you this in my our pre stuff, but I've had a near death experience where I saw the other side, totally conscious, was very lucid. And Initially, it was like I was just on the karmic wheel, just going around and around and around. This is that symbolic stuff I'm talking about. And it was just like, no, no, no. It was, it just was on and on. And the moment that I decided, okay, I've had enough of this, I want to get off of this, boom, it was gone. And I was off of it. And I was in another plane. And it was so expansive. And my perspective was so big to think about coming back to the smallness of being a human being was absolutely ridiculous. It was just such a limiting experience. It's like, why would anybody want to do that when I'm all this? It's wow, look at this. I could do anything, I could be anywhere, and it's all so amazing. And so that's what I mean when, yeah, do you want to talk to your ancestors? Sure. As a human being, yes, they're closer to you. But the bigger you are and the more aware you are, none of it matters. None of it matters at all.
Great explanation to that question. I think that's the best answer I've received to a similar question that I've asked in the past. Okay, so you said something interesting, right? You said during your near-death experience, were experiencing this like karmic loop, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of bopping around, and you're like, okay, I no longer want to experience this. I can think that's interesting. I think that's interesting because people always say that we're stuck in a karmic loop until we learn our lessons, etc. But you it sounds like you're saying that you can make a conscious choice to be like, I don't really want to participate in that anymore
Yes.
and move on from that loop.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in my work as a past life regressionist, the death piece is very important because that's typically where the ties come in. It's, oh, I didn't get to do what I wanted to do. Oh, I made so many mistakes. I could do it better next time. I really want to get the girl this time. I really want to be a big success, whatever the thing is that you're fixated on. And so you sign up and you do it again and again and again. And it's typically the same stuff we get obsessed about. So I've seen my own past lives and we're kind of all the same. We get into this situation, we start to believe that it's real, we start to invest so much in it, and we get our feelings hurt, and we're all so alone. Everybody is so alone. And it doesn't have to be that way. And as soon as so what I took away from that is okay, I don't want to do this again. I want to be here this time. I want to live like mindfully and consciously. I want to experience stuff. And I'm not going to be alone. Unfortunately, I come from a good family, high touch family, warm family. So that wasn't really too much of an issue. But I cultivate that because I know the value of it from seeing other people and myself go through life alone over and over again. And it really helps to have that connection because if you think of being all that, and you're only connected to a teeny tiny piece of yourself, then how limiting is that? We really do need connection, not just because I want somebody to talk to or I don't want to be by myself doing this great thing. It's more than that. It's being with facets of yourself. I can't experience the wholeness of myself in one body, in one person. I need these people to reflect back to me. Look at the juiciness of life. And if you're not open and you're not connecting, and I don't mean just hanging out with people, I mean being vulnerable and really exchanging some emotional juice. I don't know why we're here. It's a wasted opportunity.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I think I'm going to continue to have similar conversations in regard to reincarnation. I do have
Mm.
people on one end who are like, you definitely have to come back. If you haven't learned your lesson, if you have not cleared your karmic debt, you're going to be back here. But I'm like, if we're constantly forgetting our other
Mhm.
lives, then there's no, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it makes it that much harder to understand the lesson. So it almost feels like, it's scary to think about being stuck in a karmic loop, right? Now I'm hearing other people, and will put you in that camp of people who are like, yes, you're here to live life and learn lessons and interact with people who are a reflection of you and get the juiciness of life. But you don't have to be stuck in a
Yeah,
karmic loop if you don't want to. You can make a conscious decision to get out of that loop,
right.
whether or not you've cleared your karmic debt or not, which selfishly, that sounds good. Again, still trying to figure out what the truth is in all of this, but I do think it's interesting how people are divided in that way of thinking. But I want to zero in a little bit more on what you're talking about, the interconnectedness of life and the juiciness of life. There's something that you say that it's important to make a living practice of dying
Oh,
before you
yeah.
die. What does that mean?
Everything is cyclical and just spring just happened again. It happens every year. It's a cycle. And if you follow just the wheel of life, we're going to move into summer, which is the maturation of everything that's just beginning to blossom right now. And then fall is the decline and death, and winter is that fallow time where we have death and then the conception and then the gestation before spring again. So that's the life cycle. And we're doing that all the time. So if we are graduating, that's a death. You know, you're ending your life as a student and beginning your life as a career person. If you get married, if you're doing it as a sacrament, that's a death. That's a death of your young single self, and it's a birth of yourself as a married person. That's the difference between a piece of paper. Oh, marriage is just a piece of paper, and marriage is a sacrament. If I'm doing it as a sacrament, it changes me. It's an initiation. I have become something different. When women begin menstruating, that's a natural transition. I can't go back to being that again. So there are initiations, there are natural initiations, and there are initiations that we undergo, and everything ends. And if we're participating in that and ending, it's a practice of dying so that when we get to the end of life dying, we've done it lots and lots of times. And I think one of the fascinating things of past life is you go through that process of dying over and over again. And I know dying, I think, is the second most common fear of people. Once you go through it a few times, it's just okay. It's just another transition. And not to be like, oh, that's nothing, because it's a hard transition. It's hard for your spirit to leave your body if you've ever seen anybody die. It's not an easy thing. But you know that you're going to land on the other side and it's going to be okay. That's just it's an initiation, something new will happen and I can go on. But what happens is we don't die and we don't have initiations. It's just we get older in the same body with the same juvenile thinking and the same juvenile behaviors, and nothing ever transforms. And I think we have the luxury of doing that because we're a rich country. We don't have to do anything. But if you come from a place that's poor, you have to become a man. You have to become a mother. You have to do whatever you have to do because you don't have a choice. And I think that facilitates the process of living because you're in it. You have to experience the pain of it. We're fortunate, or maybe not fortunate enough, that we can buy our way out of it. So lots of things we don't do.
You know, it's so fascinating. When I asked you this question, I thought you were going to say something in relation to dying to our ego, which
Oh.
maybe someone could argue is a part of it in a way. And that's the thing that a lot of people say. But what I'm hearing from you is that everything in life is cyclical and we die to so many versions of ourselves.
Yes.
And if we accept that we're going to die to so many versions of ourselves, we will live a life in flow and we will not be stuck in chapters or seasons longer than we need to because we understand that the tides are shifting and
Right.
we're entering new cycles. And by the time we get to the end of our life, that's another cycle that we're entering into, which is dying metaphorically because we don't really die, but I understand what you mean. And this is so synchronistic for me right now because I do struggle with change, right? There's so many different things happening right now in my life, and I'll be very candid and transparent. I recently lost my 9 to 5 job, been at the job for about 3 years, and I kept getting this tiny whisper like, you need to move, right? It's time for you to go and experience something else. But I was so comfortable in my job. The work-life balance was amazing, and I spent 3 years there, and unfortunately, they had a mass layoff, so it wasn't anything personal. But again, it's like I have so many situations in my life where I get this push to, okay, it's time to enter a new chapter. It's time to end or transition out of the cycle. And I'm like, but I'm comfortable here. So I just want to stay here. And a lot of people who are listening to this can probably relate. Even the example you gave about when you decide to get into a relationship or you decide to get married, you're dying to your single self. And
That's right.
while a lot of people are excited about the possibility of having a partner, a lot of people struggle with dying to their single self. In your
Hmm.
season, you only answer to yourself. Now you have to consider someone else, and that is a big change for people to accept, of letting go of who they used to be. So I just love how you broke that down because I think it's very important. And I've said this to myself a couple of times, like we are reborn so many times in this life. Reincarnation aside, we're constantly being reborn with having to leave our physical body. And if we understand that, then it makes me even feel more limitless and excited because it's like endless possibilities depending on the cycles and tides we have to ride. So, yeah, I really love that. How you
Yeah, and
broke that
another
down.
aspect of that too is that hopefully we become elders. And if we don't grow in wisdom and we're not doing that dying, there's no way you're going to ever be an elder. There's lots and lots of old people out there. There's not a lot of elders. And that's so important because the elders is the way that are they are the people that show us the way to the next phase of life, which is death. They don't know. They're just as scared and ignorant as everybody else. And it's such a shame because we need those people.
So, I want to zero in on that a little bit, right? So, again, I know you said animism, it's a way of life, but I have to ask this question, right? Is there like a fundamental belief regarding the afterlife that most animists kind of subscribe to?
I think, generally speaking, the afterlife is the great mystery because the mystery is part of it in animism. I know that in the West, we always, okay, we have to have the answers to everything and you just go more and more knowledge. But I think with paganism in general, and animism specifically, the great mystery is part of it. It's like the darkness. You don't know what's in the darkness. That's why it's so scary and dark. But it's part of it. You never illuminate the darkness because it's just the other side of light. So it's always going to be there. You're never going to get to know. And I think for me, that's okay. Well, just accept it. This is the part you don't know. So, I mean, I'm curious, but there's not like a burning need for me to know.
And that's freeing because you're absolutely right. I think most people want to know what happens after we die. What is all of this about? And the more you know, the less you know. And sometimes you really
Yes.
have to be okay with the mystery of life. And even the little that we do know and what we're talking about, there's still so much mystery and nuance embedded in all of these things that we're saying right now. So I agree with you. And speaking of the darkness, I know you do a lot of work with people in regards to shadow work and releasing stuck energy and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on this concept of non-duality? I've heard people describe as instead of looking at things as good and bad, you see the nuance and how they exist and are in relationship with each other. So there's really no separation between what is good or what's bad. I would like to know what your thoughts are on that and how it pertains to the shadow work you do with your clients.
Okay. So, on this plane of existence, as a human being on planet Earth, we live in a dualistic situation. That's just how nature works. It's complementary dualism, though not antagonistic. So, there's no good or bad. It's just positive, negative, meaning polarity, not good or bad. And it's black, white, because you have to have extremes to know a thing. If there were no black, there could be no white. If there were no tall, there could be no short. So that's what I mean complementary duality. They help each other, they're a part of each other. They're not, I have to choose one or the other. It's not a good one and it's not a bad one. You could be on any side of the spectrum, but as long as you're on the spectrum, you're still on the spectrum. You're talking about the same thing. So if I'm saying I want to combat hate, in my desire to combat hate, I'm engaging in hate. So the way to make it non-dual is just to be in a place of acceptance and non-judgmental. Now, on the other realm, so on the other side, the duality doesn't exist at all. And my experience of it is so when I was on the cycling through life on the wheel, there's duality in that. It felt like I'm talking through my dualistic way of seeing the world, but it's like the closer you are to this realm and this body and this existence, there's still duality. But once you detach from that wheel, it doesn't exist at all. And to even use words or to describe it, none of this exists. None of this exists. There's no words to describe it because it is so different. So I agree with people that there's non duality, but not in this not on this plane.
So you're saying in order for us to exist on this plane, we are going to have to engage in dualistic perspectives and dualistic actions because people keep talking about the shift to the fifth dimension and they say that the shifting to the fifth dimension is this idea of being in a non-dualistic state, non-judgmental state. And are you saying that while on this plane it's just it could be impossible to fully embody that?
I think so. I think people can be mindful and non-judgmental and experience it as complementary duality, but you're still going to have people engaging in war. You're still going to have people who are not nice, manipulating and lying and do all of those ugly things. But if you're not engaging in it in your mind, so you're not judging it, you're not trying to control it, you're not trying to stop it, then I think that's as close as we can get as humans.
Okay, I understand what you're saying because there are just limits to this dimension. And as human beings,
Yes.
no matter
Yes.
how much we work to get our minds to enter whatever dimension we're working towards, we're still on this physical plane. There's still that
Right.
duality that we have to confront. What does it mean to live clean and die clean?
This is actually a great segue into that because I think if you are here and you are detached from judgment, then you're clean. You're not carrying anything. So let's say that I don't know, what could I do that's not nice? Let's say that I ran into the back of your car. Okay. And there's no malice in it. It was an accident. I'm so sorry. And I'm sorry, but I'm not like, oh my God, I'm such a horrible person. I'm clean. It's clean. There's no emotional baggage to it. So that's what I mean by clean. We can all live and make mistakes because we're going to. So I'm not saying anybody has to have a flawless life, but you live in a way that you're detached from the outcome of things and the judgment of things, whether they're things that you do or other people do to you. If you do that, you're dying clean. And then you're not taking any karmic baggage with you. So I don't have any debt. I don't have to come back. Everything is clean. Now, my mom is the best example that I have ever seen of that. The woman does not hold on to anything. If she owes you something, she's going to remember. Like I'm talking about something physical. Like she borrowed $10 or something. She's going to remember and she will give that back to you. But she doesn't carry any debt. If something's over, she does something, somebody does something to her, 5 minutes later, it is done. I've never seen her carry anything ever. And she is like the greatest example of that to me. So that's what I mean by living clean and dying clean. And in animist cultures, the funeral rituals are designed to, let's say that I die accidentally, but didn't see it coming. I wasn't old, I wasn't sick. And all of a sudden, and now my descendants and my family, they don't know if I was clean or not. There's going to be all kinds of rituals to make sure that baggage is ends with me because they don't want to clean it up. They don't want that in the ancestral line. So there's lots of funeral rituals and lots of different cultures that have to do with making sure the person is clean and transitions well.
It's so interesting how funeral rituals play such an important role in lots of different traditions,
Yeah.
cultures, spiritual practices and stuff like that because I just think once you die, like why do you need to carry out a ceremony outside of acknowledging and mourning the person that you lost? But there's so much more that goes into it that is tied to some sort of spiritual bath
Hmm.
almost in a sense, which I do find fascinating because is it one of those situations where if those practices or those rituals aren't done, does that mean someone can't cross over peacefully or they would suffer on the other side? I just really want to understand a little bit more what the thought process is behind that because recently I lost my uncle and I'm Nigerian. They were doing his wake ceremony and there was this part where they basically were called all of the elders in the community and they were like, we have to dance and sing this certain song so that the ancestors can receive him. And I thought they wouldn't receive him without that. But again, I know I don't want to confuse you now, but yeah, I just want to understand like why those things are so important.
Yeah. So first, the funeral rituals are for the living. so that they are not consumed with grief. There's regret. Oh, we didn't get to do this. Oh, I was so mean of that, or whatever. And I love the tradition of having paid mourners. Because if you get somebody there keening, somebody who can keen, if you get somebody there who can wail, they make this sound. Can't even describe it, but it's the sound of despair. And whenever you hear that sound, you everything in you that has ever been unfelt just comes out, and it is so cleansing. And I think when somebody dies, you got to get that stuff out. So it's for the living to get that out so they don't carry it. And it's for the dying or the dead so that they know if your culture has these traditions that they do every time somebody dies, and you're hanging out at the funeral, and lots of people do. Most people go to their own funeral as a spirit, and you're like, oh, they're doing the funeral. Oh, shoot, that's me. A lot of times people don't know that they're dead. So the funeral is also for the dead to let them know that they're dead. And there's a transition period where they have to, I guess they don't have to decide if they're going to stay or they're going to go. But in this transition period, once you get to acceptance, it's easier for them to move on. And my understanding of it is that they don't really have a lot of energy of their own because they're dead and they're newly dead. So they don't know really how to be dead. So the prayers, the songs, the rituals, all of that gives them energy to transition. And they need the help of the ancestors to take them to the next plane. So it's not something I know a lot of people think, oh, you're dead and this automatically you're clean and you're good and you're an angel. And that's not how we see it at all. It's a process. Dying is a process and it takes a while. So in different traditions, sometimes it's 30 days, 40 days, 90 days, a year. But during this time, that's when they're moving to the other side. They're doing all the things they need to do to become an ancestor. And usually for the living, there's rituals that they have to do as well to help that along. Because if you don't do them, let's say the person died and they were not clean. And let's say that they were a bad person. They did some nasty stuff. Everybody needs cleansing after they die, but some need more than others. And you don't want that in your ancestral line because everybody's coming through that line. So it's to your benefit to clean that up. So you use that time to do these rituals to make sure that they get to the other side. And lots of cultures have rituals too around where the dead can go, like where's the shrine, because you don't want the dead in your house. You don't want them bothering you. It's a separate thing. They shouldn't be here. This is not their realm. And so those rituals start to make sure that they get there and become ancestors, not hungry ghosts, just hanging out.
Yeah, I had someone on the show talk about the importance of crossing over loved ones because
Yeah.
a lot of times people are stuck on this plane for whatever reason, numerous reasons, one of them being they don't want to accept that they're dead.
Yeah.
They have a lot of regret and they just hang around this plane, hang around their loved ones, and they're essentially ghosts. And she talked about the importance of crossing them over, and she talked about a specific prayer that she shares with people to help cross over these loved ones. And obviously, you're talking about something similar with these rituals that we can see in different cultures. So, again, it's just very fascinating because people always say that once you die, you're clean, you're absolved of everything, you're an angel, you're this. And the more I do this work and the more I talk to people, the more it's reinforced that is not the case.
Yeah.
And the more it's reinforced that there's a whole, like the spirit world is a world, right? I don't know how else to describe it with different levels of being, right? And all because you become an energetic body does not
Hmm.
mean you're not struggling with certain trials and tribulations, right? So it's interesting how we as the living can help the dead because there's always been this like superiority that I always had in the sense of, oh, the people who've died are more wise, more knowing than we are, and they can transcend and do whatever they want to do. And while that could be true, it's not always the case, and we can help guide and usher them along. And speaking about ancestors and not wanting certain bad energy in the ancestral lineage. So I've heard people also say that you have to be careful which ancestors you're talking to because some ancestors have a lot of baggage. And I heard somebody plainly describe it as if you had an uncle or several uncles or aunts who were alcoholics, they could be encouraging that spirit of alcoholism within you. And if you're not aware of that and you keep communing with them, they could continue to perpetuate that negative characteristic or trait. So, how do you call in your benevolent ancestors or your ancestors that you feel are clean or are in the light?
So, if you don't have an ancestor honoring practice, I would not be talking to your ancestors because they're probably not what we call resolved. So, they're not clean. Think back to the when was the last time your family had an ancestor honoring practice? Those are the ancestors that I'd be talking to. So, it's 500 years, 1,000 years, 5,000 years. Those are the ones that you know are clean. Those are the people I'd be talking to. Because if they didn't go through any rituals, they didn't go through anything, I would not count on them being able to help you because they might be ghosts. So when you're talking to, maybe I really love my grandmother. My grandmother was so sweet. That doesn't mean that she can help you on the other side because if I don't know what she's got going on inside, I don't know, what her obsessions are. Energy is real, or emotions are real energy. And that's what keeps us on the wheel is I have this real desire to be famous. I can't let go of that. Okay, you're on the wheel. I really want this guy. I have to, we're soulmates that you're on the wheel. Whatever it is that energy is tying you here, that's the stuff they're carrying with them. And that's going to influence how they interact with you. So it could be addiction, it could be whatever. Trauma is a real thing and it has to be resolved. You don't get out of jail free because you die. You just come back with it and you pass it down to your kids. For I would find out how to do this. Get somebody to do it for your dad. Make sure they have a real good funeral. Make sure your funeral is straight. Somebody's doing this or live clean so that you're not carrying a bunch of stuff with you. But I would not be talking to any ancestors that you don't know that they died clean.
Thank you for that disclaimer. You talked earlier about cycles, right? And how everything is cyclical in life here on this plane and even on the other side, I believe, right? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Clearly, right now, as a collective, we're going through some sort of cycle. And I just wanted to know from your perspective in your work and in talking to your ancestors or spirit, what is this cycle about for humanity?
That's a really good question. It's not a question that I've given any real thought to, but if I had to give an off the top of my head answer, it feels to me like we're coming to the end of a cycle. So if the pendulum swings to the right, as soon as it only goes so far, and then it's going to swing back to the left with the same amount of energy that it had before. So it feels like we're up on one side and getting ready to swing because things are so extreme. And I think the place to be for me is at the center. So I'm not right, I'm not left. I'm right here in the center where all things are possible. This place of potential, this place of balance. So the yin and the yang. And I think when we are here at the extremes, we have the opportunity to just take the momentum and go back the way that we came, which is probably what's going to happen. Or we can decide, okay, no, because you have the momentum. So what are you going to do with it? I would like to go to the center where the duality isn't really in play. It's just a matter of potential and wholeness. So I think we're going to have a choice. I think each of us has a choice.
Thank you. I agree with that too. It feels like we are at the end of a cycle
Hmm.
and a lot of stuff is coming up to the surface that we have
Yeah.
to clear and make way for the new. And I am with you in the sense of I feel this sense of pure potentiality,
Hmm.
just feeling balanced, even from a micro level, thinking about my life. And even when I think about on a macro level, I can feel the shift and I'm optimistic about it. And I've been feeling the shift now for a couple of years, just in the way that people are talking about life and afterlife and consciousness and metaphysics and spirituality. Like we've seen this like huge shift. Conversations like this that we're having now are becoming more common. So I feel like
Hmm.
a lot of people are waking up to what life is really about and we've been stuck in the rat race and we've been programmed to think a certain type of way. And I think people are slowly but surely breaking out of that programming. And I feel like it's going to be the shift that almost feels like it happened all at once, but it's been percolating now for some time. So thank you so much. This has been a great conversation and it's given me a lot to think about. I have to ask you, have you shifted in perspective on anything recently? And this is a fun last question I like to ask all my guests, and it could be as deep or as lighthearted as you'd like it to be.
So I'm always in the process of shifting, and I've done it so many times that I think, okay, I'm not done, and I'm never going to be done. Don't hold me to anything I've said before because it's going to be different. But the last big shift is the one to just being in a space of potential. I don't really want to be on the left or the right, the yin and the yang. I like the center. And it's the center doesn't feel good because we want so much to put our feet down and say, I am this. And there's none of that there. There's no walls, there's no foundation, there's no language because everything is on the table. So that's not a place where a lot of people can stand, certainly not comfortably. For people, though, who are wondering, okay, what's next for me? My thing would be to suggest that you try that out and see how that feels. I think if you're able to tolerate that, you'll notice that it feels freeing. It's so freeing to not be this or that, or to stand on a side, or to fight against the. You don't have to do that. We don't have to do that. And there's so many things that are telling us that's what we should be doing. There's so much strife on the news and social media, and you got to stand for this. And if you don't do that, you're a bad person. No, you're not. You don't have to do any of that. So that's my thing.
It's interesting because I ask this question, and a lot of times what my guests will say will prompt another question for me. And
Oh,
what came to mind for me was, as you were talking, is that some people say that, yes, people always talk about being in flow and not defining yourself or labeling yourself, but then I have to pay my bills, right? I'm looking for a job. I'm stressed. Like, how can I allow myself to just exist or just be when I have all of these things, all of these challenges that I'm currently facing? Like, what would you say to someone
okay.
who felt
So,
that way?
so I'm not talking about don't do anything. I'm just saying don't be attached to that and do what you're doing for the moment. And it doesn't have to last any longer than that. If I have a nice conversation with somebody on a park bench, it doesn't have to last a lifetime. That could be all that there was meant to be. And that's just perfectly fine. So it's like maybe not making any plans, just seeing what this moment has to offer. And that's really what I've been doing. And it's so freeing. It really is. Not, maybe not for everybody. I'm a Pisces, so I'm used to doing that, but it's just been wonderful.
Yeah, and I resonate with everything that you're saying because I feel like I'm on that path as well. Where can people find you, Laura, if they want to connect with you, work with you, or listen to your podcast?
So the best place to get me is my name is lauragiles.net or lauragiles.org, and then you can find the other links from there.
Perfect. I'll leave that link in the show notes for the listeners. Thank you again, Laura, for stopping by Shifting Dimensions. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you.